Hi everybody, I'm Jman. Today we are playing Madden 20, but first, I'm going to read from Genesis 3, verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Genesis 3:6, English Standard Version. Alright, I'm going to put this out there right away, because I do think that some people might get this a little confused, that this is a misogynistic or not so feminist liking verse. And I'm going to say right away that's not the case. In fact, what I'd like to present is that the man is just at fault, if not more at fault, for taking a bite of the fruit without stopping the woman from taking a bite from the fruit. She was just having a conversation with a serpent, and the man didn't stop her. The man allowed her to have a conversation with a serpent, or a snake if you want to see it that way. Doesn't matter. She was having a conversation with an animal. The man allowed it to happen, and in allowing it to happen, the man allowed her to get convinced that it was okay to eat of the fruit that they had been told not to eat from. Now, do I think then that the man is completely at fault? No, both the man and the woman are at fault. But this is the story of the first sin, when both man and woman decided to fail and sin. Okay, so what? What's the point in that? Great question. Well, the reason I want to talk about that is because everything about this channel that I try and do, I try and make this channel so that it focuses on who Jesus is, focuses on God, and part of that is focusing on mistakes that humans have made. For instance, the man and the woman made a mistake by eating of the tree that they should not have eaten from. Duh. But because of that, the whole world is now guilty of sin. Some call this, let me think for a second here, get my original sin. I don't necessarily see it as original sin. I do see it as the origin to the sinful nature of mankind, which may be the same thing, and I'm just being stubborn and not wanting to call it original sin, but wanting to call it something else. But I definitely see it as a time when man and woman made a choice to break the laws that God had said, encouraging God to make new covenants and new laws so that there could be structure, and so that God could prove who God is and why God is who God is. It's not about there's not too much else into it than that. It's God trying to prove God's superiority over man when man wants to try and be superior to God. And I think way too much. I know that every inclination of man's heart is corrupt. It's actually a really good way of putting it. Every inclination of man's heart is to be against God, to do what man wants to do. Man believes that man is more important, man is bigger, man is stronger, man is better. There are people who have, of course, had God complexes. That's not the play I wanted. where they believe that they are more important than the God that created them, that they are stronger, better, smarter. And that's not the case. It's not about man being better than God, because man didn't create God, God created man. And everything that man has created after God created man, that's kind of what it is. It's as man creates more, man is able to prove that God's creativity is what allows man to be where man is, who man is, what man is. It's about what God has done from the beginning for man, not so much about what man has been able to do on man's own. If you look at this text, it does say the woman took the first bite. Fine, whatever. But that doesn't mean that that proves that the man's not the only one who's guilty of sin. Both man and woman are guilty of sin. The other thing that's important about this, or that I'm going to cover, it's not necessarily important, but I'm going to cover it because it needs to be talked about. Man wasn't necessarily an apple. In fact, I am 99.9999999999999% sure that it was not an apple. That whatever the fruit was does not exist on this planet anymore. Whatever that fruit was, we no longer get. So, in talking about a fruit from a tree, a lot of people want to talk about it or tell their, kids, the kid's story. When it comes to being a kid's story, it's about, that's a first down. It winds up being about an apple, and that the point of it being an apple is to kind of help to understand what a fruit was. But we don't know what this fruit was. I honestly don't think that we know what this fruit was, because if we knew what the fruit was, we would want to eat this fruit. We would want to be connected to this fruit. And that, of course, is not the case. Sorry, I just tapped my microphone. For us to know what the fruit is, that's not the case. Because if we did know what it was, like I said, we would want to eat of that fruit. We would want to be more connected to that fruit than just, this is what it was and whatever. But because God went and locked down the garden after man sinned and got to the fruit and ate the fruit, then God locked down the Garden of Eden, so we don't even know where the Garden of Eden is. How are we supposed to even know what the fruit was? And that's part of the intention of who God is so that I too much focus on the game. Oh, what's the time saying? Okay. But it's for us to understand that the fruit isn't what's important. The where isn't what's important. What's important is there was a man, there was a woman. We later come to find that the best name for the man is Adam. And the best name for the woman is Eve. But in the case of the text, all we have here right now is the man and the woman. That's it. That's all we know. But they prove that everything going on with man is all about selfishness. The man has selfish desires, things that the man wants for whatever reason. Like the selfish desire of wanting to win this as quickly as possible. I don't know if it's a selfish desire, but the desire to want to be successful in this game right here, right now, is part of my selfish desires. It's what I want. It's, if I can be successful in this, then I can prove that playing video games is what God has called me to do and is part of God's plan for my life, and me being able to talk about who God is while playing video games. And there's a very selfish aspect to all of this, because obviously I am taking what I want and trying to apply who God is to that. And that is not the best, wisest choice for anybody to make. For a person to say that what I want, God wants because I want it. Now, because I've seen God working through this, it makes me a little bit less, okay, maybe this is all about me, and more, all right, I'll keep doing what you're asking me to do because it feels like it's the right thing to do. It feels like I'm doing what you're asking me to do if I'm talking to who God is and about who God is. But in all honesty, no. God did not want man and woman to eat from the tree that he asked them not to eat from. In fact, in eating from that tree, what they did is separated themselves from God, which is the exact opposite of what God wanted. God did not want to be separated from man. God wanted to have a strong relationship with man. And by breaking the covenant that God set, which all man had to do, man had one job. And in this case, it was man's job was do not eat from this tree. That was man's goal. That was man's job. That was man's task. And instead of following through with the do not, man went ahead and said, I will do what I will. This is my will, and I will do this. And that broke God's heart, but it also broke God's covenant, because at this point, the rules were simple. All you have to do is not break my law. My law is do not eat from this tree. Then God said, okay, well, you ate from this tree, so now I have to keep you away from the other tree, which of course messed up God's plan as well. These were probably some very beautiful trees. I would imagine these were very beautiful trees. But I also had somebody point out, or I heard somebody point out, that these two trees at the beginning are connected to two trees at the very end. At the very end, there are two more trees that God plants when we're looking at Revelation. So, when we're thinking about Revelation, we see that God has planted two trees. Kind of a restoration of the two trees that were planted originally. I should just let them get those points so I can get the ball back faster, because it wants me to get the 42 points, but it doesn't necessarily say they can't get points. I guess if I'm doing it, do it faster. I don't know. Maybe we'll retry this challenge and see what happens if we do it that way. Haven't decided yet. I don't really want to do this challenge too many times over and over and over again. But I guess I could do a second down on this challenge, because I typically would go 4. I know I don't have time for a 4th down, but we could definitely try a second down and see what happens in that case. And that's me just figuring out stuff on my own and really distracting myself from what I really want to talk about, because I feel like my conversation about what I thought I was going to talk about has changed. Not changed, but didn't exactly work to the quality in which I had thought that it was. That's a good way of putting it, I think. The quality in which I thought that this was going to be was more, let's look at how this relates to Jesus. And it relates to Jesus in the fact that I just mentioned, as in, well, he did plant two trees in the garden, or not in the garden, in heaven, in Revelation. But at the same time, it doesn't relate to Jesus so much as from that point on, man had a broken relationship with God, and that relationship had to be fixed, and it was fixed on the cross. The whole point of Jesus coming to earth was to fix the broken relationship that God and man already had. Oh, good, I didn't fumble. Okay. The cross was to fix the broken relationships, was to make it so that there was no, here's what you have to do or don't have to do to have this relationship fixed. Everything was broken. Now, how do we fix it? Well, let's fix it by changing what needs to happen. God tried it with, all you have to do is don't do anything. That didn't work. God tried with, here's a whole list of laws that you have to follow. That didn't work. So as man failed to live up to the standards that God had for man, God had to change the way that things were going to work for man and God to have a better relationship. So, in order to change that, certain things had to happen. And it became, again, I think, a you don't situation. Darn, I was hoping that I could, maybe, if I'd have chosen that player. Okay, well, we'll see. To kind of let that player slip through. I guess it doesn't matter, but it does kind of matter to me. Because I want to get the ball back faster. And so, with the broken relationship that happened in the garden when both man and woman ate from the tree that they weren't supposed to eat from, it changed the relationship. Now God couldn't spend time with man because man was broken, man was incomplete. Now, I will say this, there is some truth to what the devil said to man. When the devil said that you will be like God, knowing right from wrong, man realized that he knew right from wrong now that God had shown, now that the fruit had shown him, it's not working the way that I'd hoped. That's kind of what I figured was going to happen, actually. Man realized that man already knew that the right thing to do was to not eat from the fruit. But man chose to eat from the fruit anyway, and by eating from the fruit, learned that he did already know the difference between right and wrong. So what? I mean, that's really what we're looking at. What we're asking is, okay, so what's the point of all this? Well, the point is that man has a stranded relationship with God, like I've mentioned, and I will mention over and over and over. I guarantee I will talk about this. I won't stop talking about this because there's an importance to it to me that I feel like needs to be seen and shown, where we need to understand that God and man's relationship has been broken and is broken, and it's okay that it's broken, but there's a solution to the brokenness. The solution came in the form of Jesus. Jesus came to earth. Jesus, who is God, came to earth, died on the cross so that man can be free from sin that man put man's self into. the whole idea of sin being man's fault is a true statement, is 100% factual. But it doesn't mean that just because man failed God, that God failed man. Instead of God failing man, God came up with different ways to accomplish God's task. God said, okay, man struggles with sin in their own heart. So what do? I'll come up with laws that show them that they have sin in their heart. So the law of Moses was introduced to help man understand that there is sin in man's heart. And man understands that, but in understanding that, man decided that either I'm going to be perfect or I'm not. And since I can't be perfect, I might as well just not try. And so this led to an idea of imperfection that still takes hold today. That people believe that, well, if I'm not going to be perfect anyway, might as well not even try. And that's not the idea at all. That's not what God was going for. God was going for, you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. I still want to have a relationship with you. I want you to know that you're important to me. And that is why Jesus had to come to earth. Jesus had to come to earth to prove to all of mankind that mankind is important to God. That God's Son, or that God was willing to die so that man could understand their importance in God's plan. Does that mean that man still understands that importance? No. Man still gets it wrong. Man and women, and I have been saying man this whole time, but it's been a royal man or a we man, where it's not just mankind, man and woman. It's what I've been meaning, but I know I've been failing to say it in that more proper style of saying it, because it's just easier to say man than say mankind or man and woman or the human race. But humans have failed to live in accordance with the way that they've been called from the beginning. Humans have failed, and I'm sure I've repeated that over and over and over again, because that's what's important about Matthew, about Genesis 3:6, is that humans failed to live the way that they were supposed to live. Humans still fail. I know I still fail. Like failing in that play right there. That play was a fail, but that play wasn't a sin. That play, to call that play a sin, is obviously so untrue. It's not a sin because it has nothing to do with a right or wrong choice. By not making the tackle, I wasn't able to complete the play right, and that is how I failed that play. But I'm getting better. I'm not failing as bad now. I am getting to the tackles, but I'm going to fail this challenge. That's another type of a fail. It's not a sin, but it's a fail. How am I sinning right now? I'm sinning by not focusing well enough on what I want to say and causing myself to continuously repeat myself. But I don't know that that's a fail or a sin, because instead of sinning, I'm proving that, or I feel called to be part of the gaming and talking about God at the same time. So what could I say is a sin as far as the two are concerned? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't have a thought about that right now that I could come up with really quickly. But I could say that my sin comes when I focus, or I put the game and even the viewership of my channel, I make that more important than God. I make everything that I'm doing the more important piece of I try and make the channel bigger than I'm trying to make God. That is when I'm making my biggest mistakes, when I put the channel before God. And I know I do that. I do that when I'm playing. I do that when I look at my stats and I say, why are my stats so poor? That doesn't matter. I need to remember that my stats don't matter. It doesn't matter who's watching this. I should be doing this because it's a worship to God. My goal is to give myself to God, my all to God, as I'm playing and worshiping. That's what my play should be, a form of worship. It shouldn't be, I'm the best video gamer ever, which clearly I'm not. So that's why I'm playing, because I want to show off how good I am at video games, because that's, first of all, that's a lie. And second of all, how I play, or how well I do when I play, that's not what's supposed to be important to me for this channel and for myself. What's supposed to be important to me is God, making God important, bringing God up in all of this. When it's all about God and not about me, that is when it's important. And that is the whole purpose of all of this. So then I start to say that I am a human being and I have failed. I have failed God, I have failed myself, I have failed you, my viewers. I have failed all over the place, left, right, and center. Almost everything that I have done has been a fail. But when I get to enjoying talking about God, and I think maybe I'm there, when I get to enjoying talking about God, that's when it becomes more of the worship. When I remember that, yes, there's the text that I need to talk about, but there's also more to it than just the scripture. There's what's happening now. There's the text that I mentioned from Genesis that talks about how sin started, how sin got into this world. And that's important. And then there's the text about how Jesus removed sin from this world. And that's also important. It's very important for me to remember that Jesus removed sin from this world. And in removing sin from this world, Jesus saved all of mankind. Now, I'm still a human. I'm still going to fail. But I can fail in a way that glorifies God. And that is what I want to do. Am I going to fail? 100%. Have I failed during tonight's playthrough? Yes, I have. And I've repeated that. That's part of my failings, is repeating some of the stuff that I've said instead of just basically, as I repeat some of the stuff that I say, that's kind of part of my failings. It doesn't make it my all in all, the most of my failings, but it's part of failing. Oh. But it doesn't matter. I'm allowed to fail. I'm not going to try to fail on purpose, but it's going to happen, and I'm going to forgive myself when I do it instead of being upset with myself for having done it. Because those are my options. I can either be mad at myself for having had failed, or I can forgive myself for having had failed. Because if I get mad at myself, then nothing gets solved. If I forgive myself, then I've done what I'm required to do. And I forgave myself for the first one that I tried, and I was successful. So we want to return to challenges, because we did what we wanted to do. Hey, success! And I hope that you're able to understand that I'm not trying to yell at people for failing, because I understand that failing happens. It's a part of life. It's built into the genetic code of human beings. Does it mean that we want to fail? No, of course not. Why would we want to fail? We don't want to fail. We want to be successful. We want to do the right thing. We want to love God in the same way that God loves us. We want to love God's people in the same way that God's people love God or deserve to be loved. Broncos offense. Sure, mankind has failed. Jesus came to this earth to solve that failure, and did solve that failure. And in solving that failure, brought us into good standing with God. Ooh. Okay. Yes. What do I do with that? Yes, sure. I'm gonna add that to a set real quickly. Brought us back into good standing with God, and allowed us to be free from the sins that we had committed. Allowed us to be better than the sins that we had committed. So, thank you for watching. I hope that you understand that it's okay if you fail, when you fail. It's not necessarily an if, it's a win. I hope you understand that's okay. So thank you for watching. May God bless you as you learn to forgive yourself and forgive others. And remember, God really does love you.